about the money bomb. Stand with Infowars.com and my incredible crew and all of our other supporters and help us get the word out even more. The ball is in your court. The rest is up to you. It's Infowars Money Bomb 2011, November 3rd. It kicks off 11 a.m. Visit the website at InfowarsMoneyBomb.com, Infowars.com/Moneybomb.
And again, that event will be on November 3rd, 2011, coming up in just a few days from now. Now, on the other side of this break, we have a guest joining us, Mark Morano from the Climate Depot, to break down the larger ClimateGate global warming hoax that surrounds us all. And right now, if you didn't catch the latest Ron Paul ad, we'll show it here. He's won another straw poll. We're going to talk about that, too, in the next segment.
Ron Paul, a visionary who predicted the financial crisis, a leader with a plan to solve it. The Paul plan? Balance the budget, cut $1 trillion year one, eliminate 5 federal bureaucracies, end the foreign wars and nation building, rein in the Federal Reserve, pay down the debt, cut taxes to create jobs. Ron Paul, a plan to restore America now.
I'm Ron Paul, and I approve this message.
If you believe in this information and want to support its viral spread, go to the Infowars store at Infowars.com. We've got the new G.I. Joe Infowars t-shirts. We've got the incredible Pro Pure gravity-fed filters available at Infowars.com in the store. We've got a new DVD, Scientists Under Attack, the Don't Tread on Me flag. We've got all sorts of different bumper stickers to help spread the rebellion virally. It's all there, wristbands, citizen rule books in every order. Order online at Infowars.com today. The water filters, the canteens, it's all there. Infowars.com.
And we are back from break on this Infowars Nightly News broadcast. Again, I'm Aaron Dykes. Now we have more news ahead. There was a terror drill at Walcott High School, that's in Connecticut, and they hypothesized an intruder in the building, and they have certain procedures they follow. But wait, the police took the opportunity to conduct a drug search of the lockers and the parking lot while the students were on lockdown in their classroom, using one excuse to invade privacy of the other kind. Now, basically, they've asserted there's no Fourth Amendment in public schools. That's what you get at these indoctrination centers. And even the teachers were not informed, according to this article in the Republican American. In other news, DARPA, the Pentagon's research arm, hopes to master propaganda. Wired magazine reports that the government is already trying to control the message, so why not have science do it in a systematic way, said a researcher familiar with the project. Now, what they're talking about here is a system which, on the surface, sounds like sci-tech hokum, but they say they want to take narratives and make them quantitatively analyzable in a rigorous, transparent, and repeatable fashion. The idea is to detect terrorists who've been indoctrinated by propaganda. And this is going to be a long study under the name of narrative networks. They even have job listings linked in the article and the synopsis of the research, if you can call it research. And what they want to do is identify groups who are vulnerable to terrorist recruiting tactics, or so they say, and they want to learn to counter the message. But really, they go on to admit what they want to do in part is track social movements. And they say the first 18-month phase of the study, researchers would look at how stories infiltrate social networks and alter our brain circuits, leading to political radicalization. Now, if there were terrorists under every bed, maybe somehow this would be a good idea. But here in reality, it's about the most Orwellian thing I've ever heard. In fact, George Orwell wrote that the last free space remaining under the 1984 system was those few cubic inches inside the brain. And now DARPA and the Pentagon, well, it's really not their first attempt. They're trying to infiltrate even that space. And this totally reeks of pre-crime. It totally reeks of branding political ideas as extremist and so forth. Now, just last week, you saw Alex talking to the spokesperson from Demos. That's the front group that's going in to re-educate school children about how information on the internet can't be trusted and how really only government information is believable, without, of course, proper research and verifying of sources. And it really links in, too, with Cass Sunstein's plan and part of the overall cybersecurity agenda to go online and even in the flesh to infiltrate and undermine conspiracy theorists, because after all, anyone who calls out what a joke and a hoax the war on terror is really needs to be broken up ideologically so they don't influence people against the establishment beliefs. Just unbelievable. Something else to keep an eye on. New technology the Pentagon says they're wasting money on in the midst of this budget crisis. Very interesting. In other news, Ron Paul wins another straw poll in the major state of Ohio, which has always been an important state for general elections. The Texas Republican continues to trail former Mitt Romney in national polls, but he's won this straw poll with 53% of Ohio Republicans. Now, one thing you notice here is that Ron Paul has won probably most of the straw polls. I think there's charts showing he's the overall leader of the cumulative straw poll results for the 2012 cycle, but nobody really reports when he wins. They report when Michelle Bachmann buys all the votes for the Iowa straw poll, or when Herman Cain, a manufactured Federal Reserve candidate, wins straw polls, but they never want to talk about Ron Paul. And here he is winning again, and he's raising a lot of money, too. Now, we also have a clip from Ron Paul when he was on Meet the Press with the very fair and balanced, credible, independent journalist David Gregory, who basically accuses him of trying to undermine the economy and create another crash. But as you know, Ron Paul really just wants to get the money out of government and back into regular people's hands. Let's play that clip now.
How is that possible that a draconian cut like this would not hurt anybody, particularly in this economy?
Because we have to take this money from the economy, and the politicians get to spend it. So that's a negative. It hurts the economy. After World War II, we cut spending by 60% and cut taxes. 10 million people came home, and all the money and the expenditures went back to the people, and that was finally, we got over the Depression by having these draconian cuts.
So you have...
And there's, of course, a lot more to this clip. We're obviously not going to show the whole thing, including some of the snarky comments from David Gregory. But let's play another clip here where Ron Paul talks about his philosophy.
The question I ask myself is, what should the role of government be? And I've come down to the conclusion that it shouldn't be that we're the policemen of the world and we have this runaway entitlement spending. So therefore, if the role of government is the constitutional approach, you can't keep spending like this, because now we face this worldwide crisis of sovereign debt. That's our big problem, but you can't deal with that unless...
Now, on the Occupy Wall Street front, you're seeing all manner of Democratic and Wall Street figures saying they sympathize, they feel the pain of the protesters. But now, I guess you could put Queen Elizabeth in that bunch. She's now facing energy cost problems at her palaces as the money given to them by taxpayers is supposedly approaching the 10% point that would put her in, quote, fuel poverty. It's a propaganda story from the Financial Times, a government organ, really, globalist organ. The Queen herself prowls the corridors. This is the biggest joke of all. The Queen herself prowls the corridors of these palaces, switching off superfluous lights, a Buckingham Palace employee said. The royal accounts show the Queen electricity and gas bill was $2.2 million, a £2.2 million pound electricity and gas bill in 2010 to 11, or 6.9% of the monarch's total income. That is, of course, just her government income. She makes much, much more as one of the world's largest landowners. She also makes a lot of money in underhanded deals and other stuff as well, but that's another matter. But I guess you could say she feels the pain. She's one of the 99%. So take that, Wall Street. Now, in green news, the global warming and climate change hoax continues to fall. We know it's just a man behind the curtain, whether you want to say it's Al Gore or what. And we do have a guest joining us in just a moment to discuss this. His article here, Scientific Case for Man-Made Climate Change is Dead, and that's Mark Morano in the Washington Examiner. We also have The Hill. Study finds no evidence that climate change caused more severe flooding. A new study conducted by federal scientists found no evidence that climate change has caused more severe flooding in the U.S. during the last century, despite what we've been told the science is settled and the rest of it. There's also from the Climate Depot a story about MIT's Richard Lindzen and physicist David Douglas, who say Mueller's findings on warming are nothing remarkable. The best study does not alter ClimateGate's serious breaches of ethics. And again, it's the argument that just because there's been a warming trend, somehow that's due to man-made CO2 output. Just totally ridiculous. We're going to get into that and a whole lot more in this interview in just a moment. And there's also the big freeze that Britain is expecting with snow starting in October. This is expected to be the biggest freeze in 100 years. And in other news, we turn now to Mark Morano of the Climate Depot. He runs that website, which covers the global warming and climate change fraud and hoax. He's also formerly on the U.S. Senate Committee for Environmental and Public Works. He's been in other news and media as well. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so there's a lot breaking down from this big fraud on global warming then.
Yes, there is. This is a shocking from Monday. We're only one day into the work week, and we have just an incredible amount of developments coming down the pike today. The federal government has announced that there's no connection with U.S. floods and man-made global warming going back more than 100 years. And even more shocking than that, there actually is a connection, and it's actually the more CO2 there is, and the more global warming they allege, the less floods we're having. They're not finding any trends. Today I posted a teaser to the full report that we're going to be coming out with at Climate Depot. From A to Z, the case for man-made global warming fears has collapsed. And we're talking about Mother Nature leaving egg on the faces of the promoters of man-made global warming. And we start with the Antarctic, which has been added near record sea ice extent, showing as a whole it's actually, depending on how you look at it, it's cooling and it's actually gaining ice. The Arctic, which has not reached the low point it had in 2007, which was only a 30-year low point. Sea level, which people were warning, Al Gore's film showed half of Florida underwater. Sea level, far from accelerating, has actually dropped. NASA said there's been a 2-year drop, and now the European Space Agency says sea levels are about the same level they were in 2004 currently. Mount Kilimanjaro, which Al Gore spent time in his film talking about the snows of Kilimanjaro would be no more. That has now been gaining ice and snow, defying Al Gore. Malaria, massive drops in malaria rates, contrary to global warming. Cholera, the same thing. And if you get into ocean heat content failing to warm as they predicted. Global temperatures, satellite records showed 1998 still the high point in temperatures, and we've remained steady or cooled. Many scientists predicting coming global cooling. They're predicting a horror winter in the U.S. this year. In Europe this year, and the U.S. is going to have its coldest winter in a decade. So across the board here, it just keeps coming. The hits keep coming. And one of the things that also came out today, melting glaciers aren't producing fresh water shortages. This was one of the big scares the UN said, that we were going to have all these glaciers disappearing and we're running out of water. That's not happening. Other people have said climate change is going to cause more forest fires. A new peer-reviewed study out today showing that's not the case. I can't even keep up. A to Z collapse of this movement. And what does the media, in reaction to all this, has a man named Richard Mueller from Berkeley, who's come out now and written in the Wall Street Journal of all places that his new study shows that, yes, we've warmed since the 1950s. Therefore, there's no cause for skepticism of global warming anymore. It is the most bizarre thing I've ever heard a global warmist promote. And even more insulting, the media is claiming that Richard Mueller from Berkeley is some kind of skeptic. He is such a committed believer in global warming that he resigned from the Sierra Club in the early 80s because they were anti-nuclear, and he believed we needed more nuclear energy in order to fight global warming. He was critical of the ClimateGate scientists, but that does not make him a skeptic. So the media is claiming any warming trend equals proof of man-made global warming, but the entire movement is being stripped bare as subprime science.
And we've got a movement that really never was scientific. It was always political, and the whole hoax of the science was settled was really kind of classic criminal behavior of hurry up and give me the money before the authorities come around.
Yes, and what happened was 1988, the United Nations got involved in the climate picture. In the 1970s, we had, many organs and science scientists and scientific groups, including the CIA, National Academy of Science, warning about a coming global cooling. Well, that sort of faded quickly. We were actually at the end of a 40-year cooling period in the 70s, and then we warmed up from the late 70s to the late 90s. Again, the high point in temperature is 1998. So they switched gears, and you can literally find where they talk about droughts, floods, tipping points.